Most podcasters think their goal is to get someone to listen to a single episode of their show. Someone finds it, they hit play, they listen once, and you think, great, that's a win. But the real magic of podcasting happens when someone listens to 5 episodes, 10 episodes, maybe even 20 episodes in a row. That's when something changes and your show is no longer just a podcast they stumbled across. You, as the podcast host, start to become someone they trust. Your podcast stops being just content and it starts becoming a relationship. In case we're meeting for the first time, hi, I'm Julia Levine, aka the Podcast Teacher. You're listening to Podcasting for Solopreneurs, the show for online business owners who want more listeners, leads, and sales. Today, we're going to talk about what makes podcasting content bingeable, why binge listening matters so much, especially for business podcasts in particular, and 5 specific characteristics that cause listeners to keep pressing play. When someone binge listens to your podcast, they start developing a strong familiarity with you, your voice, your perspective, and the way you think. And that is incredibly powerful, especially for business podcasts that want to turn listeners into customers. Listening to more episodes means more opportunities to know, like, and trust you. The more bingeable you make your content, the faster that relationship develops. So the first characteristic that makes podcasting content bingeable is clear positioning. When someone listens to an episode, they quickly understand what the show stands for and what they're going to get from it. It's focused, not broad or vague. So just a moment ago, I included a line that said, "You're listening to Podcasting for Solopreneurs, the show for online business owners who want more listeners, leads, and sales." In this episode, I'm talking about bingeability, which relates to attracting and retaining listeners. So I'm being clear about the scope of the show, and then I'm delivering on it. When there's clear positioning, someone finishes an episode and they naturally assume that the next episode will continue with the same kind of information. And so they often keep listening. That clarity makes it easy for listeners to stay. If someone listens to your podcast and they can immediately explain what your show is about and who it's for, that's a really good sign that your positioning is doing its job. But clarity alone isn't enough. Even if someone understands what your show is about and who it's for, there's another factor that determines whether they keep listening or move on. The second characteristic that makes podcasting content bingeable is a familiar structure. Most bingeable podcasts have a rhythm to them, where every episode is not identical, but there's a certain structure that listeners quickly become familiar with. There's a routine way of opening the episode, style of delivering the content, and closing the episode. The predictability is familiar, it's comforting, and when listeners know what to expect, it then becomes easier for them to stay and listen to another episode. But even when someone enjoys the content and they understand the structure, it feels familiar to them, there's still a practical question in the back of their mind of, do I have time for another episode right now? And that's where the third characteristic comes in, episode length. Shorter episodes are just plain and simple, more bingeable. When someone sees an episode that's only 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes, that feels manageable. It feels like something they can probably listen to right now, whether they are commuting to work, taking their kids to school, walking the dog, folding laundry, whatever it is, they probably have time for an episode of that length. And when they finish that episode, the shorter it is, the easier it is for them to think, okay, I have time for one more while I finish folding this mountain of laundry, or whatever task they're taking you along for. Before they know it, they've listened to several episodes in a row. So shorter episodes lower that barrier. They make it easier for someone to start listening, and they make it easier for someone to keep going. And when someone listens to several episodes in a row, they're probably getting several nuggets of helpful information or quick wins in a row. I hear this all the time about my FAQ Friday episodes. People will tell me that they love these mini episodes that are less than 5 minutes each because they can listen to 5 or 10 of them in one sitting, and they can learn a whole lot about podcasting in that time. That's not to say that all of your episodes need to be super duper short, but if binge listening is something you want to encourage in your podcast, episode length is one factor that's worth paying attention to. Ask yourself whether your episodes feel approachable from a listener's perspective. Because when someone finishes an episode and feels like it was a quick, valuable listen, they're much more likely to scroll through your feed and press play on something in your show again. Longer episodes absolutely can work in podcasting, but when you have episodes that are 45 minutes, an hour, even longer, it requires a bigger commitment from the listener each time they press play. And so that's just something to consider as you're planning out your episodes and how long they are. Now, these first 3 characteristics that we've talked about, positioning, structure, and length, are absolutely important. But they won't keep listeners coming back for more on their own unless you do the next 2 things as well. But before I tell you what those are, if you're listening to this episode and thinking, I want my podcast to feel more like that, I want listeners to stick around and listen to more of my episodes, this is exactly the kind of thing that I help podcasters with. If you'd like my help looking at your current podcast or planning your future one and figuring out how to create episodes that keep listeners engaged and coming back for more, you can book a consultation with me at thepodcasttteacher.com/consult. We'll take a look at your show or your show idea and explore opportunities to work together to make your podcast bingeable. Okay, the 4th characteristic that makes podcasting content bingeable is listener connection. The reality is that there are probably other podcasts out there with the same information as yours. There's a saying that you may have heard me mention before. Podcast listeners come for the information, they stay for the host. Your opinions, perspective, delivery style, and personality all shape how you deliver information. If you're reading a script that's 100% generated by AI without any original ideas or opinions, there's going to be nothing about you that stands out, and it's hard for listeners to connect with you. Listeners need to understand how you think and feel about topics in your industry. So share the hot takes, get on your soapbox, and just be you. It's important to note that this characteristic of your podcast will get the right people to binge. It's not going to get everyone to binge. Some people are not going to resonate with your style, and that is okay. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that I have a background as a teacher and that my episode style is very informative, very straightforward, not a lot of chit-chat. People who want a warmer, more conversational podcast about podcasting probably try out my show and then they go elsewhere. But from the people who do stick around, I get a lot of positive feedback about my style. So I'm being me, teaching and talking the way that I naturally do, and I attract the people that resonate with me. Now, there's one more piece of this bingeability puzzle. Even when someone enjoys your perspective and they feel connected to you, there still needs to be a reason for them to keep going, something that pulls them toward the next episode. And that's where the final ingredient comes in. The fifth characteristic that makes podcasting content bingeable is curiosity. This means episode titles that catch attention and convey value. Take my episode 188 of this podcast as an example. It's titled 3 Simple Podcasting Strategies to Boost Listener Engagement and Sales. If you want to boost listener engagement and sales, you probably want to know what those 3 strategies are, right? Then once I've gotten your attention with the title, I can further hook you in with the episode description, which appears as preview text under the title in most podcast players, so you see it kind of at the same time that you're seeing the title. So the description for that episode reads in part, do you ever feel awkward trying to sell your coaching or digital offers through podcasting? You're not alone. Many solopreneurs struggle with how to guide listeners towards paid offers without sounding pushy or salesy. In this episode, you'll learn 3 subtle selling strategies that feel natural, build trust with your audience, and turn listeners into paying clients. Most likely, if you've made it that far, you're pressing play on that episode. You can also create curiosity by directing people to past episodes within your current episode. If I mention a topic tangentially in an episode, I'll often say something like, episode number blank covers that if you want to learn more. So for example, if you want to learn how to boost listener engagement and sales once they have binged your podcast, go ahead and check out episode 188. Now it's time for me to be the curious one. I'm curious what makes a podcast bingeable for you. My email is in the description, and I would love to hear from you. And of course, if you'd like help creating a bingeable listening experience for your current or future podcast, you can book a consultation with me at thepodcastteacher.com/consult, and we can explore the opportunities to work together. Until next time, happy podcasting.